chair of this committee. This meeting is called to order at 6:35 p.m. Tonight, we're joined by our district manager, Angel Muscane, the staff liaison to our committee. In order to conduct an efficient meeting, we have began a new process. And so I'm going to kind of spell out some new ground rules. So bear with me as I read. No one may speak until granted the floor. CB11 members, if you have a question about board business or wish to make a motion, please raise your hand through Zoom. If you click on the participants icon, the participants panel should appear, and you may click the chat icon and relay any difficulty you have to the staff. Sorry, I read that wrong. This is gonna take some practice. But if you click on the participants panel, that icon for the raise your hand function should appear. And if you're having technical difficulties, you may click the chat icon and relay your difficulty to the staff there. Members should not engage in back and forth discussion. The chair will recognize the next person to speak. The chat function should not be used for CB11 business or questions about the agenda. All such remarks should be made on the record by raising your hand through Zoom. The chat function should only be used to alert us of any technical difficulties you are having or to state in writing information such as an email address that was already stated aloud on the record and during the meeting. When a member is given the floor to speak, I will identify you and you can unmute yourself so you can speak. Please keep your questions and comments succinct and germane to the discussion. Members of the public, if you have a question or a comment about the subjects on the agenda, please use your raise your hand function through Zoom to be recognized. Thank you. All right, we will now take attendance by roll call. Board members, you may unmute yourself and answer present when your name is called.
Jessica Elliott.
Present.
Elsie Encarnacion.
Present.
Ivy Hume.
Present.
Francis Mastroda.
Present. Present.
Thank you, Francis. Andrew Padilla. Andrew Padilla. Vinnie Torres.
Did you skip me, Angel?
Whom?
Jessica Morris, I'm out of order.
I did skip you. I skipped you, but didn't forget you.
Am I no longer on the committee?
You are on the committee twice. Jessica Morris.
Thank you. Here.
Vinnie Torres. Jason Villanueva. Stephen Villanueva.
Present.
Thank you. Candy Vives Vasquez.
Present.
You have quorum, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Elsie, please. The agenda for tonight's meeting was distributed ahead of time by the board office and was also posted online. If there's no objection, we will adopt the agenda as stated. Committee members, if you object to adopting the agenda, you may raise your hand through Zoom now. Oh, okay. Seeing no objections, the agenda for tonight's meeting is adopted. Candy, I see that you have your hand up.
Oh, no, I was motioning to approve the agenda.
Oh, okay, yeah, no problem. So the new process by which we're doing this, which is new to me, but also new to the board, I think we are going to see if there are any objections. If there are no objections, then we will just adopt and we won't have to do roll call. So there's no motion is needed. And then the same goes for the minutes. So the minutes from our last meeting were also distributed to the committee members ahead of time by the board office. So if there are no objections, we will adopt the minutes from that meeting. Committee members, only if you object to the adoption of the minutes, may you raise your hand now through Zoom. I can't see all the hands, but I don't think we have any. So seeing no objections, the minutes from the last full board meeting are adopted and they will soon be available on the website. The minutes for tonight's meeting are being taken so graciously by Jessica Elliott. Thank you so much. And I will probably bring up a new business if we have some time, maybe a discussion about rotating minutes so that Jessica does not have to do them every single month. Okay.
Elsie, if I could just add one thing. So I have to apologize. In my notes for the script, I put in full board instead of land use. So it's the minutes for the land use committee meeting, just for the record.
Yes, And also you can tell I'm reading it right off the page. Thanks. Now you messed me up. So now we have the informational update, correct?
Announcements.
Announcements. So I know that for the announcements, we have our next land use meeting is scheduled for May 12th, 2021 at 6:30, would also be on Zoom and virtual.
As part of the May 12th Land Use Committee meeting, the committee will host a public hearing on the Elevate Transit zoning text proposal from city planning.
Thank you. Any other announcements by committee members? No. Okay, we will now move on to informational updates by the Department of City Planning on the proposed zoning text amendments. Is that Jose?
Jose Trucillos, I'm sorry if I'm mispronouncing that, and Annie White are on from DCP.
Yes, I need to share my screen really quick.
Sure, just give me 1 sec, let me stop. Okay, you're free to go. Jose, your volume's a little low.
Oh, can you hear me now a little better?
Yes, thank you.
I think it was just too far away. Let's see if I'm sharing this correctly. Screen.
I'm still having some trouble hearing.
Can you hear me now? A little better?
That's better. Thank you.
Okay, awesome. Sometimes when I turn on, let me just turn on my camera. Sometimes that affects my computer too. Let me know if the slides are changing when I click. Yeah, okay, great. So we're gonna start. This is gonna be a really quick presentation. As Angel said, we are coming back on May 12th to do a full presentation on this, more in depth in a lot of the details. This application is certified for April 5th, which means the community board has 60 days to review it and provide the recommendation. And the zoning text amendment is called Elevate Transit Zoning for Accessibility, or CFA. Here we go. The Citywide text amendment proposes to expand 2 specific zoning tools to better coordinate private development and extension improvements. First is a transit easement requirement that will apply system-wide, and a second is a new improvement bonus program that will apply in the highest density area of the city. The vast majority of the NTA stations are very old. They were built before 1950s. Only 136 of the 400 plus subway stations, counting the Standing Island Railway stations, are accessible. And 25 of the 39 Long Island Railroad and Metro North Railroad stations are available. Increasing accessibility is key in modernizing the system transit. It's something the NTA has been working on, allocating a lot of resources into this for moving forward. The first component of this proposal is a system-wide issues requirement that will address some of those limitations of the accessibility and the issues. As part of the requirements, all developments and enlargements on zoning lots within 50 feet of mass transit stations and applicable zoning districts will need to file an application with the MTA and then certify with DCP to determine whether of an easement on the zoning lot is needed to help facilitate station access improvements in the future. So this is something that we already have been doing, but mostly focused in the transit district, and we're going to expand this out a little more outside the actual districts. We work in the resident district to support multifamily apartment buildings, which are generally more compatible with the transit stations, entrances, and other transit-related uses. Medium and high density commercial and manufacturing districts will also be subject to the requirements and the development in such districts to make sure they're more accessible and able to accommodate station entrances. The second part of the proposal is expansion of the transit bonus to address the limitations of the bonus mechanism. The proposed transit bonus will continue to grant floor area bonus up to 20% of the maximum floor area ratio for developments and enlargement that construct station improvements, but expand the geography of where the transit bonus might be used. These bonus will be subject to simplified discriminatory review and approval process in the form of an authorization by the Department of City Planning. The expanded transit bonus program will be optional for sites that are proximate to a mass transit station. In conclusion, and I apologize, this is really quick. And in conclusion, Zoning for Accessibility proposes a zoning text amendment to establish a framework for coordinating siting and provision of transit improvements with new developments on adjacent sites. As part of the framework, a required consultation process will apply to all developments and enlargements of zoning lots within 50 feet of mass transit stations and applicable zoning districts where easements are needed. Sorry. All right. So as I mentioned, the application certified on the 5th, and you guys will receive all the materials by tomorrow. Hopefully, I'm going to be checking with Angel to ensure that all the materials are received. You're going to have a chance to review this, and as I mentioned, we will come back to your full board on May 12th to hopefully schedule a presentation and also vote on this. If you do have any questions in between now and then, once you review the work and all the documents that are going to be available to you, feel free to send it to us so we can actually better coordinate in advance. It's going to be a lot of information coming your way, so I would really appreciate that, the heads up in terms of what the questions are our biggest concerns are, so we can prepare our friends at DCP and also the MTA who might be able to attend these meetings. This is the first of 5 different citywide text amendments that are going to be coming to all community boards. I have listed in here the fresh 2 footage residential expansion program that is going to be expanding the fresh zones outside from where they currently are in Manhattan and some other districts to make it a little bit expanding the zones out of there. There's a health and fitness text amendment that is going to be focusing in making it easier for gyms and different type of physical establishments to be able to operate and open in different areas of the city. As you guys currently probably know, there's some issues with synergy in type of uses, and there's very costly, very expensive to actually get a permit to be able to operate a gym. So the city has targeted this as one of our priorities, given the current situation with COVID and the recovery for the city. Same goes back to the open restaurant program. It has been a success and is a lifeline to the restaurants amid COVID and the pandemic that the mayor will be announcing hopefully very soon that this will be made permanent in this program. And this is what DCP is going to be working on. And just to clarify here, a really quick point in open restaurants, we will be working only on the sidewalk open cafes and not on the roadway. I know this, the difference is just that, the ones that are within the sidewalk cafes are governed by zoning, and the ones that are in the roadway are going to be governed by DOT. We might be able to bring some people from DOT to speak about this in more detail. And the last is the citywide hotel tax amendment, which will be referred out in the spring and early summertime for you guys to review as well. And we will be able to schedule those presentations as well as soon as possible. And that's all I have for this information. And I'm going to share the presentation with Angel too, so they can circulate this with you guys. And as I said, there's going to be more information coming tomorrow with the 60-day certification notice.
Thank you so much, Jose, for that. Can you detail to me a little bit about what kind of information we're getting tomorrow? What exactly will be distributed to us?
Yeah, so you guys will be getting the actual zoning text amendment. So the whole full text amendment on this will be delivered tomorrow. Yeah, and I believe we might be able to have recordings of that full presentation of this that I might try to look up for you if they're available already, and give you the time so you can actually look at the presentation that was given by the people who actually wrote this text in our transit department and also in our zoning department. Who have a lot more detailed information that I can provide right now.
Okay, perfect. If there are any questions right now, I know we're probably going to have to get some more information on this, but we can throw some questions at Jose right now. Yes, Jessica Morris.
Thanks, Elsie. I have a pretty basic question. So this zoning text amendment, how does it interact with existing zoning regulation for, transit zones? We have a couple of subway lines. Well, we have a subway line and the idea of a subway line in our district, and a couple of connection points that all have development sites around them. So what already exists that you are sort of modifying, adding to, or changing with this amendment? Are there sort of concepts of I guess there's a blue dash line that sometimes goes around the map. That's a TA special district, something like that. What exists now that this amendment would affect?
Right. So as you mentioned, like we do have the transit easement. I think, sorry, I'm trying to go back to the actual map that will have something like this. So what this map, what this text amendment will be doing is actually expanding where the actual transit land use zones are located, for actually giving us more opportunities to do the transit easements and actually certifying those if it's needed or not, having a little more opportunity to actually have these stations qualified as part of like a transit land use district.
And so the types of incentives that are offered are similar to what stands now, but just with a larger catchment zone, or you are offering a different type of incentive here to encourage accessibility?
I believe the bonus has been modified to actually, I believe it's kind of like the same amount of bonus, the 20%. I can double check on that, but it has been modified to actually ensure that there are no loopholes, as we did with the zoning for coastal flood resiliency, to ensure that we have a more standard type of way that we do in these bonuses when we work in the transit zones. But I can get more information about specifics and how that's different. Currently, we are doing transit easements and we are doing certification on that, and it's a little more in between the MTA and the actual property owner and how they deal with those situations. And once they do the improvements, and that's a little bit different, like that's when they come to the certification for us to get the extra bonus. But the transit easement that we're doing right now is like a very two-step process between the MTA and the DCP to actually certify and just ensure that they have the transit easement. Sometimes they're not looking for a bonus. The MTA is just letting us know that they need the easement in that particular station. So we want to do a lot more of that as we move forward with the accessibility goal.
And then just a follow-up question is, for existing buildings that may have interest in being modified, is that something that they can take? Some places are fully built around stations that are not accessible. Is there does this provide a mechanism or opportunity to increase accessibility in dense areas that are already fully built around the stations, or does that not really apply to solving the problem here?
I hear you in that. I wish you had an answer. I'm writing it now because I think it's very important to know if like they can either qualify for bonus or a different type of incentive. So I'm gonna get back to you guys by the 12th, or hopefully sooner on that.
Right, I think we have a little bit of a accessibility challenge along the 6th line where it is particularly well built already. So that would be something I think we would be interested to hear about.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Thanks, Jessica, and thank you, Jose. So we'll be waiting on that information, and as soon as we get it, we'll distribute it to the rest of the committee so that you can take a look at it and make sure you submit any questions ahead of time so that we can have them prepared for DCP ahead of our May 12th meeting. I think that would be super helpful. But Jose, I can't guarantee you that we won't have more questions or new questions on May 12th. We just may.
Definitely. I mean, and like I said, like there will be the experts will be here to answer all these questions. I'm fairly new to what's happening in here as well, but definitely I'm gonna try to get more information. And as you give me the questions in advance, I'll get the answers to you.
Absolutely, we'll try our best. Thank you so much. We are now moving on to, unless there were other questions, let me just check.
You had one question from the public. I just wanted to add before you recognize that hand. We did receive the materials today for the Elevate from DCP, and we shared them with the board members, and we posted it on our site as well. So any members of the board or any members of the public that want to see those, the application materials, you can go to the current projects page and click on Elevate Transit, and the link to the DCP page that has all of the documents, including the environmental stuff, is there. DCP has done a lot of work to make those materials more readily available, and this is the first one that we've seen that just links right directly to that page. So you'll find it all there.
Okay, thank you, Angel. So it was the highlighted piece of the agenda under the thing, right?
Mhm.
Got it. And the hand that we need to recognize, I believe it's Marie Winfield, correct?
Mhm.
Marie?
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. Also, just the YouTube for the review session where this was certified is already available on the DCP YouTube if anyone's looking for it. But my question, I have two questions. One is about the whole authorization process for the easement and the bonuses. What exactly comes before the community board in that process? And what exactly would the community board be reviewing? Like, is it the findings that CPC is supposed to do? Like, what exactly does the community board give advice on in approving these easements? So that's my first question. And then my second question is, when this was developed, is there sort of a projection on, because I understand that by court order, right, that all of these stations should have already been accessible many years and years ago. So in thinking through this program, was there a certain percentage of stations that was thought that this program, even though it's voluntary, would be made accessible through this program? And then with the change in sort of the federal administration and more money coming from the federal government, is that a part of that calculation of how you decided to develop the different bonuses and requirements for this program?
Yeah. To your second question, I think that's going to be something that we definitely had to come back with a deeper answer. I do know the MTA is allocating a lot of capital budget to these actual improvements for the plan for the 2020-2024, I believe it is, or 2020. I can't remember the actual date. So they are allocating all of that, but I can save that question to actually ensure that you get the right answer. For your first question, in terms of what are the process for the easement authorization, usually authorizations do not get referred out to the community board for referral process. They get referred out for actual as a courtesy, since it's a ministerial certification between the MTA and DCP. But we do alert the community board that an easement is happening, and it will be a little bit different once the bonus will be. They will be seeking a bonus because it will be part of a larger action, so the community board will be able to actually weigh in the response and the recommendation.
Thank you, Jose. Any other questions? I don't see any hands raised, so I am going to move on to our presentation and discussion. We have two pretty long ones, so bear with us and buckle up. Our first is from our 2nd Avenue subway line, phase 2 from MTA Capital. I believe Joe, is he on the line? Oh, I see him right there. Hi, Joe.
Hey, Elise, congratulations on your new appointment.
I don't know how excited I am yet, but I'm here. Do you need the screen share?
Yeah, I will screen share. If I might, I know we already have allotted a lot of time for this subject, but if I might digress for a moment, only because I am not an expert on the zoning for accessibility initiative, but I did want to thank Jose for bringing that forward and my colleagues at DCP for their partnership in that effort, but also just a couple of key points of information relative to some of the questions that came up. There is over $5 billion dedicated to ADA accessibility in the 20 to 24 capital plan. So that's an unprecedented amount of money dedicated to addressing ADA issues across the system, citywide. There was 70 stations that were earmarked to be completed as part of that 20 to 24 capital plan. Obviously, new procurements were put on hold over 2020 because of the impacts on the MTA from COVID. We are very excited, for lack of a better word, or our hope is buoyed by the new administration's stimulus package that's been put forth and its dedication to transportation initiatives and infrastructure. So we expect that our capital program will be made whole, and we'll be able to deliver on most, if not all, of the initiatives that we put forth in that 20 to 24 capital plan, albeit we lost a year to do that, so we may not be able to achieve all of them. And then one other thing in terms of questions that came up regarding areas that are already developed or at capacity, this is an extra tool in the MTA's toolbox to achieve greater accessibility at a quicker pace. It doesn't remove us from our responsibility or our ADA mandates to make the system entirely accessible. So we continue to do that, and we continue to look to do that. Right now our goal is to make no line have any, no passenger need to go more than 2 stations to achieve ADA accessibility, so that we can meet in the middle, because we do have a lot of stations that we're going to have to upgrade. So no, the fact that an area is already fully developed or at capacity does not mean that we're off the hook. We continue to look to see, based on several criteria and prioritizing ADA accessibility on several criteria. So we will continue to look at those areas. Hopefully that was helpful and supplemented some of what Jose said already. And then with that, I will dive into I'll switch hats, although I don't have much of a hat these days. And I will put on my Second Avenue subway hat, and we can dive into, my point of discussion for tonight. Can everybody see that?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. So as I mentioned in my unannounced soliloquy on zoning for accessibility, we did have, obviously, we all have been impacted by COVID.
Sorry, Joe. Could you full screen that?
Yeah, sure. Let's see. Is it not full screen? It's showing full screen on mine.
I'm getting like a little preview on the side as well. It's taking up some space.
Oh, hang on one second. No, is that any better? I'm not sure.
We're
I'm not sure what you're seeing on that end. Is it the same for everybody?
We're seeing your notes. It looks like the presenter's view.
Huh.
That's better.
Yeah? Is that better?
It's just not full screen.
One sec.
That one, exactly. That should do it.
You know what? I wonder if I've got it open in 2 places. If maybe that's the problem. No. So now we lost it. All right. So I'm going to reshare. Hang on one second.
No worries. And I'm getting some feedback about your volume. Maybe speaking a little bit louder into the mic a little bit.
Okay.
More. Make sure we hear. Is that better?
You're not sharing.
Oh, well, that would help, huh? Going backwards here. Let me get back to the Zoom screen. Screen share. Is that better?
Just go with that.
Sorry.
Don't worry about it. That's okay.
Okay.
Thank you for trying, though. Don't worry.
All right. Let me just, you know what I'll do? I'll do is that better?
That's fine, Joe.
All right. Just to reiterate the fact that, we were put on hold as far as new capital contracts for 2020 as a result of COVID. So we have been working behind the scenes to advance this project, advancing the engineering, preliminary design. We had come to this committee just a little over a year ago, not quite to the day, but we were here in March of last year before things really took a turn with COVID, to give you an update. So we are essentially, I don't want to say a year behind, but we are, a year ago today, we're virtually in the same place, sans some design activity and some recent activity on the real estate front that we were about a year ago. I've been communicating with Angel over the course of the last year from time to time to update him and the board on some of the initiatives that we've put forth. Or at least activity that we've been put forth on behalf of the Second Avenue Subway. For some of the folks on the call or on the Zoom, and for any new board members that we might have, what I'll do is just to level set and get us all on the same page. I'll briefly go through where we are or what the project is all about, and some of the information related to the project, so that we all have the same, again, level of understanding. So Second Avenue Subway Phase 2 is going to extend Q service from the Phase 1 terminus at 96th Street up to 125th Street, where it will connect with the 456, and you will be able to walk across the street to Metro North. So there will be intermodality connectivity there. There will be new stations at 106th Street, 116th, and 125th Street. If you notice the green areas on the map here that I'm showing, these are existing tunnels that were dug in the 1970s. The city ran into a financial crisis and we had to close those tunnels up, or at least cover them up. We didn't fill them in completely. And one of the benefits that we're going to achieve is being able to repurpose those tunnels as we move forward with this project. We've gone down into those tunnels recently. I was down there as recently as a few months ago, to check on the viability of those tunnels and to see what condition they're in. And you'd be surprised that for 1970s era tunnels and not having had anybody in them, or at least not operationally, they're in fantastic shape. The configuration of the respective stations is going to be somewhat similar. Don't necessarily want to call it cookie cutter because it isn't quite cookie cutter, but the configuration is such that there will be ancillary structures on the north and south ends of the station, or on the east and west if you're going up 125th Street. In the middle will be the station box where the mezzanines and platform levels will be. The ancillary structures are used for power, air supply, and in the event of emergency egress, we needed to utilize them. We could use them to get folks, emergency personnel, into the station and get folks out of the station if we needed to. The methods of construction vary greatly from the beginning to the end of the project alignment. There will be cut and cover construction from at 106th Street. And what that means is we will be digging from the top down, excavating as we go down to build the station box. We'll be utilizing those 1970s era tunnels for the 116th Street station to build out what were the actual tunnels into a proper station. And then we'll be using a tunnel boring machine from about 120th Street that will go north before finally turning west around 124th, 125th, and traveling up 125th Street to bore the new tunnelway all the way to the west side where our west side ancillary will be. Just to give you a little sense, again, of the station layouts, 106th Street will have an ancillary at the north and south. You can see the mezzanine and platform there. Again, similarly, north and south ancillaries at 116th Street. Conversely, or a little bit different, the ancillaries will be east and west of the 125th Street station. You know what? I'm just gonna. This is an older version of the presentation, so I'm gonna dip out of this real quick and then get back in because I had updated it this afternoon with some new information. So let me just jump out of this one, and I'm gonna climb back in. You know, I noticed too, it's on two different screens on my computer. One was advancing, one wasn't. So I'm wondering if, from a technical standpoint, if I did have two open, and that was the problem. Bear with me 1 second while I open that up. Apologies, I know you guys have dedicated a finite number of minutes for us.
No worries.
Joe, it's Ray. Do you want me to try and share my screen?
No, I have it, Ray. I don't think
You
you
got it?
even have the most up-to-date version. It's just I'm not quite sure where the one that I updated earlier today went. So
I inserted those slides in mine. If you want, I don't know. It's up to you.
yeah. Hang on, just bear with me 1 second.
Darling.
All right, can you see that?
Yes.
Okay. So more recently, as now that we are here in 2021, more recently, what we were advancing, you know, we had come to the community board back in February to let them know, you know, that we were hopeful again, based on the new administration's commitment to an infrastructure bill that would obviously be beneficial to the MTA and help us make our historic 20 to 24 capital plan whole, but we would also be able to free up the money that we have basically locked up in order to make sure that we maintained operational feasibility within the operating the agencies. So one of the things that we did, knowing that we would be hopefully moving forward this year, was we initiated the process of identifying properties, all of which had previously been identified in our environmental process back in 2018. So any of these properties that were identified in this first wave of potential property acquisitions or acquisitions that we were going to move forward with were properties that were already identified in that environmental assessment as properties of interest. A lot of these properties are 3-story, 4-story walk-ups that are largely vacant at this time. Some of it is HBD property, city property on 125th Street, and there's one commercial property farther west on 125th Street. We held a public hearing back on March 30th to initiate the eminent domain proceedings. What I want to caution everybody is when they hear eminent domain, one of the things they think is that somebody is going to be kicked out of their property or put out on the street, and that's not the case here. You know, the MTA is looking to initiate negotiated settlements with all of these property owners that we identified in this first tranche or first wave, if you will. So all this does is start the clock on this process. It does two things. Again, we reached out to all of the property owners and recommitted to them that their properties were properties of interest. And it starts the process, the clock on the eminent domain process, in that, you know, there is a finite time within which we now have to negotiate and hopefully come to a negotiated settlement on these property acquisitions.
Joe,
Yeah, sorry,
I'm
go ahead.
on that slide, is that a list of the properties? Because I can't really see it too well.
Yeah, this is a list that was, so I had sent the list already to Angel back in February and March when we initiated this process. So you guys should have it. I'm happy to send it again. It was part of the letter that was sent out to the respective property owners, and it was part of the public hearing as well. So it's on our website as part of the public hearing documents, but I can always
Okay.
send it, you know, I'm sure I'll be sending this presentation over as an update to the board. You know, if Angel hasn't requested it already, I just volunteered it anyways. So I'll be sending this over so you guys will have that, and then the public can also have it if you put it up on the website.
Thank you.
Yep, no worries. Here is an outline of the project alignment that shows approximately where a lot of the properties in this first wave fall. You know, the blue boxes show you where these properties, the block and lots are. And as you notice, they're in very integral portions of the project. So these are areas that we know we're going to need. There isn't any doubt, you know, despite the fact that we continue to refine our design and our engineering and look to sharpen our pencils and minimize the impacts on the surrounding community and our footprint. These are areas that we know for sure that we're going to need to go into based on their location and based on the need for the locations of our ancillary structures or our entrance structures. The next thing that this does is it frees us up to start discussion of our advanced utility work. One of the things that we learned from phase one is that, you know, despite great interaction and cooperation and coordination with all of our sister agencies, whether it's DOT, Con Edison, Verizon, you know, they have plans, and the city is over 100 years old, and their plans don't necessarily match up with what's out there in the street today. You know, there have been improvements that they've made to fiber optic, to water mains, to gas, to steam, et cetera. And what we found in phase one and some of our other projects around the city is that we get into an area anticipating or expecting there to be certain conditions based on the drawings we have, and we find out that they're not always up to date and accurate. So we've been going around the city, not around the city, but around the project alignment. You may have seen some of this, and it continues to go on to this day, where we're doing test pits and subsurface investigation, borings. So we want to confirm that these utilities are where they say they are on the blueprints, so that when we go in here and we do this early utility work, you know, we don't run into any curveballs, and that we can clear the way or the path for the project further on down the line when we get into concerted and otherwise, you know, the real meat and potatoes of the construction. So we're hopeful that we may be able to get this going possibly second half, or, you know, sometime in the third quarter or fourth quarter of 2021. Ray, can you throw up those other two slides, because they aren't in here if you have them? The two slides that Ray is talking about is just an update on where we are in our federal funding process and what some of the next steps are in terms of you know, work that you're going to see or work that we're going to advance. I'm going to stop sharing my screen.
Exactly.
And Ray, if you want to just throw those two up.
Okay. What does everybody see?
Yeah, if you go down to slide 7 and then just go full screen.
Oh.
We'll now page to slide 7. We're all working through this whole Zoom thing, Elise. One more.
How's that?
Yeah, good. So just to give you all an update of where we are in the federal funding process, the project entered into project development in 2016. As I mentioned, we went through our NEPA or our environmental evaluation. NEPA stands for National Environmental Policy Act. So because this is a federally funded project, we were required to go through an environmental review. All of these properties that I previously mentioned or was referring to were identified as properties of interest in this environmental assessment back in 2018. We achieved a FONSI, or a finding of no significant impact, from the FTA, who reviewed our means and methods against the original plan from 2004. And determined that based on the changes to those plans and updates based on, the changing demographic in the East Harlem community and the changes in our means and methods, that there were no significant changes in impacts to the community. The project received a medium-high rating from the FTA in February of 2020, and that's a very positive sign that we were going to be able to advance within the New Starts process. Presently, we've received that risk and readiness evaluation from the FTA, which helped to inform that February 2020 medium-high rating. We've submitted our request for funding, which is reflective of an increased ask of the FTA in September of 2019, rather. And then we're currently waiting our approval to enter the engineering phase of the New Starts program, and that's TBD. Obviously, given the pandemic, there were a lot of other conflicting priorities in DC, and now with a vaccine rollout and hopefully a move in the right direction against the COVID virus, and obviously buoyed again by the hopefulness and the expectations of the stimulus package. There's a new commitment to infrastructure and transit related projects. So we're hopeful that the FTA will be able to give its, increased attention to this and other transit related projects. Excuse me. And then as far as the funding grant agreement goes, that's TBD. The project team continues to coordinate with the FTA to expedite that fully funded grant agreement and enter the project into the engineering phase. The 20 to 24 capital program does include the remainder of the local match that the MTA would need to have on hand in order to advance the project. Next slide. So as far as the design progress and other activities go, we've advanced some design, or we've completed the design for that contract 1, which is that early utility contract that I spoke about a little bit ago. We've started some meetings with potentially impacted property owners, with the city, with parks, with the Department of Education. One of the areas of potential impact here is the area adjacent to the Tito Puente Educational Complex, where we need to do some work adjacent to Poor Richard's Playground there. So we're working with the school and District 4 superintendent to advance that work and get the permissions that we need to do there. The follow-on contracts to contract 1 would be contracts 2 and 3. Those are the heavy civil and structural design projects. Those are still a ways off, but those contract documents are being updated to incorporate any additional cost containment, value engineering, and they are also based on developer coordination at 125th Street. We are actively engaged in discussions with Extel and Durst, who are already developing on 125th Street and in the vicinity of areas that we would be using or be looking to use for elements of our project. So we're coordinating with those developers to make sure that our projects can live harmoniously together. And then the contract 4 is the MEP systems, which is mechanical, electrical, and plumbing, the architectural fit out of the stations, and the ancillary facilities. That's a design build contract. The draft documents are anticipated to be or were completed in Q1 of 2021. Anticipated completion of the final documents by the end of 2021. Continue to ongoingly coordinate with the developers at 125th Street, again, as part of these final plans. And then there's ongoing geotechnical subsurface investigations with regard to borings and utility investigations related to that work. And then really with that, that brings us to the end of the update. I did want to stress too, that as we get closer to actual construction, be it, this contract one, one of the things, again, a best practice that we learned from phase one of this project, and something that, I've talked extensively about with this group and specifically with Angel about, is the development of a construction advisory committee. The Community Board 8 Construction Advisory Committee, Second Avenue Subway Community Advisory Committee, would convene alternate to the full board. It was a standalone committee that we had put together, not only made up of members of the community board, but also stakeholders within the community who have a greater than one-to-one reach, so that we can provide them, the construction advisory committee, with an update on current status and future progress with the project, and they can relay that to their audiences, but also as a sounding board, so that we can hear back from them. The community can funnel their comments through the members of this community advisor or the construction advisory committee to the MTA, to make sure that we are actively engaged in a dialogue that is working to mitigate any impacts and any complications in relation to the construction. So I just wanted to reiterate that we would be looking to do that. I know that's high on Angel's priority list for the community board as well. And it's something that we think is a best practice and helped us really turn the corner on phase one, because not only does it provide timely and up-to-date information, but it certainly keeps, the community is engaged, and it's a productive dialogue. It's not just a gripe session, it's an active dialogue to work towards meaningful change and mitigations to impacts in the surrounding community that we may not otherwise be aware of. So I just wanted to point that out as well. And then I guess we can open it up for constructions. I see our construction. We're not ready for construction yet. Slow your roll. Questions.
No problem. Before I open it up for questions, I just wanted to once again read the ground rules as part of our script. So before we begin discussions and taking questions, please be reminded of the following. No one may speak until granted the floor. CB11 members, if you have a question about board business or wish to make a motion, please raise your hand through Zoom. If you click the participants icon, the participants panel should appear, and you should find the raise your hand function. The chat function should not be used for CB11 business or questions about the agenda topics. All such remarks should be made on the record by raising your hand through Zoom. When a member is given the floor to speak, I will identify you, and you can unmute yourself so you can speak. Please keep your questions and comments succinct and germane to the discussion. And members of the public, if you have a question or comment about the subjects on the agenda, please also raise your hand through the Zoom and wait to be recognized. I think that's the last time I have to say that this meeting, so great.
You'll know it by heart soon.
Yeah, hopefully that's the goal. So right now I have Stephen Villanueva as our first speaker, and then after that we have Jessica Morris, just to give you a heads up. Stephen?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Yep, I can hear you.
Yeah. Madam Chair, can you hear me?
We can, Stephen. Oh, you just muted yourself again.
Madam Chair, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Sorry, I'm having some connection issues. Thank you. Thank you very much, Joel, for the presentation. As the community board continues to craft the framework for meaningful engagement with the MTA to ensure an effective and ongoing dialogue with various aspects of the impacts of this historical project. We reviewed the phase one planning that was in place, relocation assistance programs, so on and so forth. My first question is, are there any phase 2 documents with regards to those plans, particularly relocation assistance programs, or any of the other documentation that was shared with the board related to phase 1? Has it been modified, updated? Is there a phase 2 model available?
So I think you had two questions, but I'm not sure if you got them both out, but let me address that one first, I
No,
guess.
just the one, the one for now.
Okay. So yes, well, so we are in development of the ramp, the phase 2 ramp. It is modeled off the successful phase 1 ramp or resident relocation plan. It isn't finalized yet, and it needs to be blessed by the FTA before we can finalize it and distribute it to the public and to the community board. But obviously, as we get further along in the process and really, dot our I's and cross our T's and get that ready for publication, we will certainly share it with the board for review and comment.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. My second question is related to this first step in the construction process, utility identification and potential relocation. Does the MTA at this time anticipate any significant test pits and borings that you've done? And if so, from each of those utilities that may be affected?
You were kind of breaking up, but I think you were asking about what we found as a result of our early test pits and borings, and if there are any complications or any other unforeseen circumstances. Thus far,
Sorry,
they've
you guys hear
largely,
me?
yeah. Well, so thus far, the test pits and borings that we've done have largely been confirmatory and, proven out to what we do know already.
I'm sorry, I lost connection there. Apologies.
Okay. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay, so I just want to confirm your question was relative to the test pits and borings and whether we identified any problems or areas of concern as a result of those early test pits and borings thus far and need to reevaluate, our means and methods. I think that's where it was going, but it was breaking up.
Well, I was really looking to see if you've identified any significant utility relocation that needs to occur, and if so, are there any plans to assign a community liaison from each of the affected utilities? For example, does the Department of Design and Construction need to be involved?
So we will, so yes, there's significant utility relocation that'll take place along the project alignment, and that's what that early utility contract is, that contract one that I referenced that we may be able to get going as early as, towards the middle end of this year. And that would be to relocate those utilities out of what would become the station areas. One of the things that we learned from phase 1, in some instances, we tried to support the utilities and work around them, and that just created complications and made things harder for us. So we're going to move them to the east and west of the project box, for lack of a better word, so that they are completely out of the way. They'll be temporarily or potentially in some cases permanently relocated. And there is interagency coordination with all of the agencies who would have utilities that are impacted. And similar to the construction advisory committee that I mentioned setting up, as we get closer or further along in this process, we would also have an interagency coordination meeting. And so there would be someone that's appointed from each of these agencies to work directly with the MTA, so that we know, they know their systems better than we do. They know them in and out, inside and out. And so they would be, letting us know if our plans, meet with their approval. They have to sign off on all of this. We need permits for all of this from the various city agencies in order to do this stuff, to do this work. So we would be working in conjunction with all of our agency partners on this for sure.
Okay, great. Thank you. My last question, Madam Chair, if I may, is just to confirm that, prior to the establishment of any construction advisory group involving the community board, various committees will likely want to engage you I just want to confirm the openness of the MTA to attend economic development, housing, so on and so forth.
Certainly, yeah. Well, I personally have always made myself available, and I'm happy to come speak to whoever needs an update, whether it's the full board or any of the respective committees. And then we could obviously, again, similar to tonight, provide a level set for that respective committee, just so we're all on the same page and speaking the same language, but then drill down a little bit deeper into the respective focus of that committee, whether it's land use, whether it's housing, whether, whatever it is. So happy to do that.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, Stephen. Jessica, you're next. Jessica Morris, and then Candy.
Thank you, Elsie. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. And thank you for the presentation. If you could go to the overview, there was the image you have of the overview of the how do you say right of way, the alignment. Joe, thank you. About a month after I moved to East Harlem back in 2014, I found myself walking with Dr. Haranachano from East 83rd Street, climbing down a significant number of stairs, and then resurfacing at 96th Street, about 4 blocks from where I live now on 2nd Avenue. It was amazing to see that real people build the subway, and that there is a set of plans that sits in that tunnel that gets referenced and worked on every day. So this, it's the fact that it's here, I think, in front of us. It is a generational opportunity, and for you at MTA to see that and hear it from the community board, that how many contractor employees, subcontractor employees, MTA employees do you see in this aerial shot? I think whatever number that is, you could multiply it times 3 or 5 or 15 through the duration of this project. But that takes some active work to cultivate pipelines for employment and engagement and learning and opportunity locally for something like this that will inevitably change not only a neighborhood, but a whole corner of the city for the future. So I'm not sure that I have a question other than to thank you for coming to us and continue to give updates. And I can't stress how important it is to think creatively about engaging at every point in the process, even if utilities don't sound interesting or fun. I think there are ways to connect that back to impact and young people who are in 6th grade now. Sure. And who will be in their 20s when it's time to sort of surface here. So my question maybe is you did learn a lot in the first phase, and I think if anything that I took away from that learning was the amount of engagement that is necessary to have success, and that requires communication. And I think you guys do a great job. The small businesses thinking ahead. I think we are in a great position to take away from everything that you've learned in the first phase and have this be an incredible success story. It doesn't happen fast, but a year and a half after I took that walk, I also took a ride on January 1st. So it is possible. And please continue to engage the community so that we can help support the work that you're doing and make sure that it happens as copacetically or inclusively and without harm as possible, because it's a challenge to do what you're putting in front of us.
Certainly, and I do hear you, and I thank you for the kind words. You know, one of the things that we learned again, it's always a learning process, right? So what we learned from phase one was that when we engaged the community and started bringing them down on that tours that you referenced, and they got a sense of the magnitude of what was going on beneath their feet in relation to some of, you know, what now looked like minor hardships at the street level. We did a survey of some 3,000 participants in phase one tours, and something like 94% were more tolerant of the surface level obstructions after learning the magnitude of what was going on underneath their feet, because they, you know, there was a city within a city underneath there. You know, I mean, I only wish that everybody could see, you know, the Middle Earth state of things, you know, kind of, you know, otherworldly when you're down there and it's all just raw middle of the earth. And then as things become more take shape and become more of an actual station and a finished product, you know, it still remains to be seen what we'll be able to do similar to that with tours and things like that. But we would certainly, it was definitely, you know, something that we found valuable and the community appreciated and found value in. So we would look to repeat that in the future. Similarly, taking some of our best practices from phase one, and Alex Zamudio, who's my direct boots on the ground community liaison for this project. You know, we've been in a lot of these schools already since we opened up our brick and mortar community information center at 69 East 125th Street. We don't know what community engagement holds post-COVID and what that's going to look like, you know, what that return to normalcy will be. But, you know, Alex and some of the designers on our project, on phase two of this project, were engaged and actively participated in some of the schools' STEM programs and applied what we're doing on this project to the curriculum within those schools so that kids could see and practically apply, you know, the things that are going to be happening right outside their door to their curriculum. You know, so it's fascinating. And we engaged, you know, hundreds of students and I think over 100 groups and hundreds of students at our community information center and programs.
Thousands, we need thousands. I mean,
right. Well, this was just in the first couple of years, I mean, before we even have a project.
Right.
So I actually am going to move on to the next question just because we still have another presentation to get through. So, you know, there's still more.
Well, to Stephen's point, I can talk, so you can bring me to any committee you want me to. So.
Gotcha. Candy.
I won't take long, I promise.
Hi, Candy. I haven't seen you in a while.
Okay, thank you. So my question is, I'm sorry. Yeah, the camera's on. So my question is, so now you want to engage the people of the community. So what's happening with the community center? The staff is not coming back, and much point to what Jessica is saying, to engage more people in the community. That center was very informational.
Yes.
You know, and I do gotta say that out of, you know, I proudly want to say my niece was one of the electricians that winded up working up in the 2nd Avenue subway that made it possible to help make sure it got opened up right on time on that January 1st. So,
well, thank her for her service. But no, yes, our community information center, you know, again, we don't know what community engagement is going to look like in the post-COVID world. You know, we don't know if we're going to have the volume of folks coming in and out and in-person engaging in the center like we did in the past. But we are opening that center back up. I do have to regrettably inform folks that we suffered a break-in and vandalism and robbery over the course of COVID. So we're in the process of making ourselves whole again over there. So Alex Zamudio, who I mentioned, is on the call now. He's back and he works out of that center as we put the pieces back together. So we are bringing the staff back. You know, it may not be the exact configuration of the staff pre-COVID. Some of the folks that were on our team needed to find other means and opportunities to keep themselves whole over the course of COVID, as you know, we were on New York on pause. I do know, for instance, like I said, we have Alex back. We're getting the pieces. We're putting Humpty Dumpty back together at the Community Information Center, and we will be back and operational. It just still remains to be seen, you know, how robust that engagement is in the post-COVID environment. But we're not going anywhere. We're here, and we hope to be a resource and an asset to you all as we advance this project.
Thank you. We have one. Oh, I see Chris. Wait, was that a? He is not, okay. So I will take Marie from the public, Marie Winfield.
Thanks, Elsie.
No
I have
problem.
two topics. One is if you could just clarify exactly where you are in the eminent domain process, like post-hearing, like what publication are you using to publish the findings? Like, is there a date for that publication? Do you already know if property owners are planning to appeal, like all of that stuff? And then for, you mentioned getting different approvals from Tito Puente, and I'm just wondering, is there already some sort of identified plan for all of the buses and car drop-offs and everything that happens around that area?
Sure. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, that was it.
So with regard
you.
to the, no problem, great questions. With regard to the EDPL or eminent domain property law hearing, we are finalizing the transcript. We had a stenographer, create a transcript of that entire hearing. So we're finalizing that transcript and we'll make that available to anybody who asks for it. I've already gotten a couple of inquiries as to, the transcript, the meeting minutes from that hearing. We have engaged all of the properties of interest, the owners, and sent them letters informing them that their properties were properties of interest and that they were invited to participate in this eminent domain property hearing and enter comment into public record. We had 6 folks log on to the meeting of the 15 or so properties that did log on. I had another property owner call me personally rather than, he didn't necessarily feel the need to make a comment into public record, but he did contact me directly to inquire about what next steps were. So our real estate and legal departments will be, reaching out to all of these property owners, subsequent to that meeting to engage them in negotiations, which we anticipate are going to take, months to possibly a year or more to work through a negotiation process. So we are only in the early stages. As I mentioned, this hearing, the public hearing and meeting on this subject was really just to start the clock and assert our intention to move forward in this process with these negotiations. So it's very early on in the dialogue. And then your second question was relation to Tito Puente and some of the early utility work. So we do have a plan for the early utility work, and we are working with the schools, not only Tito Puente, but as I say, we convened a meeting with District 4 and all of the schools within the District 4 pipeline or alignment. This early utility work is largely confined to the 106th Street Station area. So the most impacts would be surrounding the Tito Puente Educational Complex and the Munoz School across the street. So we are working with them to understand, the volume of buses that come in and out of there and how we would effectively maintain their bus traffic, how we might reconfigure parking to make sure that the buses have a place to go and that the teachers still maintain their parking, as well as in this new post-COVID era, with a lot of parents now opting to drive their kids independently to school, being able to accommodate the volume of pickups and drop-offs. So those discussions are happening. They're taking place now and they're ongoing well in advance of executing any contract on this stuff so that we have a good understanding.
Could you just clarify separately about the eminent domain, about the publication process that you're required to do after the hearing? Do you know when you'll be publishing that yet, and what publication?
So I think it's we have 90 days to publish our the resultant findings from the eminent domain property hearing. So it's still a little bit ways off while the legal team finalizes it. So first thing would be to get that transcript and make sure that everything in the transcript jives or our findings jive with the transcript. So there will be a comparative analysis of those two documents. Then we will have to present those findings to our board. Anticipation is that it could be the May board, probably most likely the June board, after which we would publish those findings.
Okay, thank you so much.
Yep.
Chris, I see, Christopher, I see your hand is up. I don't know if that is a question for the MTA.
Yes, it is.
Okay, please.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Thanks, Joe, for the presentation. My name is Chris Cirillo. I'm the Executive Director of Ascendant Neighborhood Development Corporation. We're a nonprofit affordable housing provider based in East Harlem. And I have two questions. One is, can you speak a little bit about the extent to which your team on the Second Avenue Subway project is coordinating with the MTA team that's working on the Metro North Viaduct reconstruction project? Jessica Morris spoke earlier about the fact that phase 2 of the subway is a generational investment and a major project, and so is the upcoming reconstruction of the viaduct. And so to have two major projects like that happening in such close proximity in one neighborhood is going to generate a lot of disruption. And so if you could just briefly speak to that and how that will be coordinated over the course of the several years of this capital plan when they're going to be developed. And then my second question is, you spoke about the developer coordination that's happening at the 125th Street sites where there are developers who have plans for significant sites. And I'm wondering if you could speak to the properties that the MTA is acquiring along 2nd Avenue and whether the MTA is looking at doing any sort of transit-oriented development on those properties above and around the facilities that you need for the subway itself. Thanks.
Sure, and thank you for the great questions. So obviously, we are all one MTA, even now more than ever before with the recent transformation that was mandated. So because of this, and largely because of this transformation, in my capacity down here, and I say down here, but collectively speaking, from where you all are in East Harlem and where my offices are at 2 Broadway, I'm down. So downtown here at 2 Broadway, I'm much more universally or globally engaged in what's going on across the MTA. So whereas before it might have been a Metro North project, or it might have been a transit project or an LIR project, it's now a MTA construction and development project. So we do have teams that are embedded or working with Metro North on that viaduct project. So, I have a peripheral understanding of what's going on in regard to that. I'm not assigned, if you will, directly to that project, but we are working in conjunction with each other. And it's certainly something, Ray Wong, who is sharing the screen a moment ago for me, is the deputy project executive for the 2nd Avenue Subway project. So our project executive team will be coordinating with that team to understand, how our projects can work harmoniously and simultaneously together. Fortunately enough for that, the viaduct project, it's going to get underway over there or on 125th. I would think sooner than we're going to get into heavy construction on 2nd Avenue Subway. So there will be coordination that needs to be done, certainly to make sure that we can all live in the same space and not, exacerbate the impacts on the surrounding community. With regard to the development coordination along the properties along 2nd Avenue Subway, the properties we're taking are largely, or acquiring, are largely for the development of our actual project. There are some instances with ancillary structures, where we would look to see if there was any potential for transit-oriented development. I have Helene Sinkway from our real estate department. Helene, I don't think we're very far along in those plans or discussion. I don't know if you wanted to comment, but it's something that we would look at, but it isn't something that we have concrete plans for at the moment that I'm aware of.
I think that really sums it up properly. We are absolutely, looking to do transit-oriented development as, wherever it makes sense. And I guess that really comes down to that, the bottom line. We have to do some more analysis, some more studies to see where it does make sense, and then pursue that. But that's definitely on our agenda of things that we are looking at.
Thank you so much for your presentation. I am going to move on. I'm seeing no more questions. Our next. Sorry. Go ahead, Angel.
No, I was just saying that was it. Thanks, Joe.
Okay.
Thank you all.
So our next presentation is a pre-ULURP certification presentation regarding Las Raíces project. That's by HPD, Ascendant, and MDG Development, if I'm reading it correctly. Are you guys here and ready to present? I see. There you go.
Good evening, Community Board 11, and I extend the same congratulations for your new position. My name is Vianda Simmons. I'm the Director of the Manhattan Planning Division at HPD. I am joined by my HPD colleagues, Felipe Cortez, Deputy Director of Manhattan Planning, Joan Huang, Manhattan Planner, Ariel Goldberg, Director of Land Use and Policy, and our development partners, Ascendant Neighborhood Development and MDG Design and Construction. We are happy to present the Las Raíces project, which is a scattered site mixed-use project located in Community Board 11. The proposed project will consist of the construction of 4 new buildings with a total of approximately 83 affordable housing units and will include green roof spaces and community facility space. We are here tonight to provide updates to our last presentation on this project, to solicit your feedback and also respond to additional questions. The proposed project is currently in pre-ULIP stages and the target certification date is May 17th. For a little background information, in 2014, HPD released a citywide request for qualifications for the new infill homeownership opportunities program, now known as the Open Door Program, and the Neighborhood Construction Program, known as NCP, to develop new construction, affordable housing development projects on small, scattered city-owned sites. In February 2018, HPD announced the selection of the joint venture between Ascendant and MDG to develop the East Harlem cluster. The East Harlem cluster, again, consists of 4 scattered sites located at 303 East 102nd Street, 338 East 117th Street, 505 to 507 East 118th Street, and 176 Park Avenue. The city, as you know, is sometimes tasked with the challenge of balancing the critical need for the development of affordable housing and the preservation of gardens and or open spaces. The dire need for both has, as we all know, been exacerbated during the pandemic, which is still present with us all today. And in this case, portions of Pleasant Village Gardens and Jackie Robinson Garden spaces will be developed on as part of the proposed new development. Both sites have been operating temporarily on HPD sites and will be able to continue through the growing season until the fall of 2021. The land use actions needed to facilitate this project requires the disposition of city-owned land, which is a full ULIP. Additionally, there was an EIS scoping hearing held on March 31st. Again, we previously presented the project to CB11, and I will now, and we're here to provide the updates. And with that, I will turn over the presentation to Jonathan Cruz of MDG Design and Construction.
Great, thank you very much, Vianda, and good evening, everyone. I'm Jonathan Cruz with MDG Design and Construction, co-developer of Las Raíces, and we're developing Las Raíces in partnership with Ascendant Neighborhood Development. And I'm here today to provide an update on Las Raíces, our new construction, 100% affordable project that will be located in East Harlem. And I'm sharing my screen right now. Can you guys see my screen in full screen?
Yes.
Perfect, so let's get started. So again, I just want to go over what we're going to be covering today. So as Vianda mentioned, we have been to the community board twice before. So this will be our 3rd presentation to the community board. I want to give an overview to this committee, well, if there's any new members of the essential elements of our proposal. And also we have some design updates we'll like to share that we've been working on based off feedback we've been receiving to date. So with that, I want to discuss what is Las Raíces. So for us, Las Raíces is 4 new construction buildings across 4 scattered sites in East Harlem. And it's going to create 83 apartments of new construction, high quality, affordable housing, as well as include 9,623 approximate square feet of community facility space. Now, on this map, we have, you see on the screen, we show the 4 locations. So Las Raíces, starting with the top locations, 1761 Park Avenue. We have 505 East 118th Street. The third site is 338 East 117th Street. And then our fourth site is 303 East 102nd Street. And we'll go through each of the specific sites in more detail later in the presentation. But as Vianda mentioned earlier, we're partnered with HPD for this project as we were selected through an RFP process. And these lots are city owned, and we'll be going through the ULURP process for the proposed land use action, which is the disposition of city owned property. So as I mentioned, our team was designated as development team, and to give more background about our development team, we'll have Chris Cirillo, the executive director of Ascendant, just give a brief overview of Ascendant.
Thanks, Jonathan, and good evening, everyone. And my congratulations as well, Elsie, on your new position. Again, I'm the executive director, Chris Cirillo, the executive director of Ascendant Neighborhood Development Corporation. We're a nonprofit organization based in East Harlem. We've been around for 33 years. We've developed 804 apartments in 28 properties around East and Central Harlem, and we have another 300 apartments in our pipeline, including the Las Raíces project. We're here pretty often. I think you all know us, so I don't want to take too much time on this. We want to spend a lot of time talking about the project, so I'll turn it back to Jonathan to talk about MDG.
Great, thank you, Chris. And just an overview of who MDG is. We are a co-developer of this project, but a New York-based developer with over 30 years of experience and over 20,000 units of affordable housing. And we're actively engaged in a number of projects around the city, most notably the RAD conversions of the NYCHA public housing. But again, with Ascendant and MDG, we share a common a dedication to affordable housing, and that is our strict focus. And that's part of what we're proposing through Las Raíces. Las Raíces will be 100% affordable housing, and it's going to directly address what the community district's fiscal year 2022 statement of district needs identified, which was affordable housing as the #1 pressing need for the district. We're very proud of the proposal we have for Las Raíces. So what does it mean when we say Las Raíces is 100% affordable? What that means is of all 83 apartments that we're creating, all of them will be income restricted and affordable based on income bands that we're showing on this screen. So specifically, we're going to have different levels of income bands that correspond with different rent levels, those being formerly homeless, extremely low income, very low income, and low income units. And about 50% of our apartments, or half of them, will be designated for incomes below 50% AMI or lower. So we are proud to have this project feature deep affordability in this manner. In addition, Las Raíces will be compliant with mandatory inclusionary housing through that HPD is requiring us to meet. And that's something that this project will feature, as well as homeless set-aside apartments. As I noted in the screen, about 16% of the apartments that we are proposing for Las Raíces will be set aside for formerly homeless individuals. As well, this project will be funded by 9% low-income housing tax credits. And we also will have a mix of unit types. Specifically to that end, we've maximized the amount of 2 and 3 bedrooms that we're able to achieve in the design across all 4 sites. And our current proposal consists of creating 21 studios, 35 1-bedrooms, 22 2-bedrooms, and 5 3-bedrooms. in the buildings overall will contribute and amount to about 72,000 square feet of residential space. And again, this is going to create 83 apartments, affordable apartments for New Yorkers. And these buildings will meet the Enterprise Green Communities design for energy efficiency. In addition, given 3 of the 4 sites are in flood zone, we are designing for a resilient design for future floodproofing. Of the 4 sites, all 4 will have common area laundry facilities for use of all residents. And in addition, 2 of the sites, Park Avenue and 118th, are required to have bike storage, which we are designing into the building design. In addition, we'll have rear yards for access to residents at the 118th and 117th Streets buildings, as well as an exterior terrace for residents to access, all residents can access at Park Avenue. And that's going to be about 1,600 square feet. But a really exciting aspect of this project is the community facility space. We have about 9,600 square feet currently in the design, and we haven't necessarily prescribed what we want to see in this space. It's something we're going to remain flexible to accommodate local preferences. But that's a general overview of our project. With that, I'd like to turn it over to Executive Director of Ascendant, Chris Cirillo, to give us more background on the design for this project.
Thanks, Jonathan. We last presented to the committee in late spring of 2020. And at that point, we were still very early in the process of developing our plans for the sites. And so showed some preliminary plans and facade arrangements for the 4 sites. And we're pleased to be back this evening to show how the designs have developed and where we are today. And before we kind of walk through site by site how the designs have evolved, I just want to also say that this is an ongoing process and one that we're continuing to work on refinements for all of the designs, and we welcome the committee's feedback on where we are now and where you'd like to see us go. We still have several areas that we're working on with our design team, but we're excited about the progress that we've made since we were last here, and we appreciate the comments that we got during that last meeting. It really pushed all of us to try our best to refine the designs that we have for these buildings and hopefully make them great new contributors to the community once they're built. So with that, we'll walk through the sites one by one. So starting with the southernmost of the sites, we have 303 East 102nd Street. So this is currently a vacant lot. It's just east of 2nd Avenue, located between 2nd and 1st on the north side of the block. And this shows you the updated rendered elevation of the building. It's proposed as a 5-story building. The ground floor space here is one of the 2 spaces set aside for community facility use in the project, the other one being on the Park Avenue site that we'll talk about a little bit later. This building has a total of 6 apartments, the ground floor community space, a common laundry room, and it will have a green roof. So we can move on to the next site, 338 East 117th Street. Again, this is also currently a vacant lot. This is actually a little bit outdated. It had been being used as a staging area for the conversion project that converted the long vacant former school at the corner of 1st Avenue and 117th Street. It's now and currently unoccupied. Next slide. And so this is proposed as a new, also a new 5-story apartment building. This one will have a total of 7 apartments. Also a laundry room. This site has a rear yard that will be accessible for residents, for recreation space, and also again, a green roof. And of note, this is one of the sites that is located in the flood zone. And so because of that, several of the mechanical spaces for the building need to be located, can't be located in the basement, and so have to be located at ground floor, which is why we don't have an apartment on the ground floor with windows there. There's mechanical space behind the wall on the west side of the building. But this one is an evolution of the design that we had previously. We really pushed the architects to look at the context of the street. There are several buildings to the west of our site that are existing, older 5-story walk-up apartment buildings, and we really wanted to come up with a more contextual design, which we believe that we've been able to achieve at this latest version. At window spacing and detailing, some areas that we're continuing to work on and have not completely finalized are the exact treatment of the ground floor space. Obviously, without windows, we want to make sure that the ground floor space creates a pleasant experience. The entryway, we're still studying the canopy and the exact entrance sequence. And we're also looking at exactly how we might do a cornice that would be reflective of the fact that this is a modern building, but also contextual with the other buildings that are on the street that date back probably almost 100 years or more. Next, Jonathan. The third site is 505-507 East 118th Street. So this is a site that has a portion of the Pleasant Village Community Garden. This is the north side of the street, east of Pleasant Avenue. And this is a street, it's a cul-de-sac, it dead ends at the rear of East River Plaza. And here's a map showing the current outline in red of Pleasant Village Garden, and the portion that's shaded green is the portion of the garden that will remain, and the portion that is shaded sort of a brown color is the portion that is our development site. Next slide. And so this is the larger building than the first two that we talked about. This is a 6-story building, excuse me, with an elevator. So the first two buildings were walk-up buildings. This is an elevator building. And here we have a total of 18 apartments, mix of studios, 1 bedrooms, 2 bedrooms, and 3 bedrooms. Again, common laundry area. This building will have a fairly large landscaped rear yard that will back up to the Pleasant Village Community Garden, and we'll talk in a minute about our preliminary thinking about that, and also a green roof. And again, this is one of the sites where the design has evolved quite a bit from what we showed you a year ago, or almost a year ago. And again, we really went back and took the feedback that we got about the initial facade designs that we had, really thought about the context. You'll see that there is, again, another 5-story sort of older walk-up apartment building directly to the west. And we really wanted to, through the massing of our building and the detailing of our building, the window pattern of our building, and the proposed cornice on our building, be able to echo some of the context of this street. And come up with something that we think fits in a bit better than our preliminary plans for the site. This is the second building that is also affected by our being located in the flood zone. And so again, those windows that you see on the eastern end or the right side of your screen are a ground floor apartment. And then the space between those windows and the entrance, which is at the left side of the building, is a mechanical space. So again, not a space where we would have windows. And so as with the previous plans, the ground floor treatment, we're still working on. The entryway canopy is still something that we're looking at. And this building has space for landscaped planter areas out front, in front of the windows of that ground floor apartment and along the entry ramp to the building. entrance. And so that's something that we're continuing to study with our landscape architect on the team, as well as the exact design of the cornice. And for all of the buildings, we haven't yet selected brick colors and other exact details. So, those we're going to continue to work on and refine and test out. And Jonathan, you can go next. And this is just another angle that kind of puts the rendering a little bit more into a street view context. So you can see the building in the context with that adjacent building. Our building is a bit set back from the property line, again, to give us space for the ramp and some of the other layout issues that we're dealing with at the front of the building. Next slide, Jonathan. And then we just wanted to share some preliminary concepts that we've been working on for this site with our landscape architect team. And so we have some preliminary views of how the garden, our backyard space might look. We're still working on this, but the exact sort of style and materials of the fence that will delineate our property line from the community garden are things that we're looking at and studying different options, how that area, thanks, you can just kind of keep scrolling through these, Jonathan, how exactly it gets planted, what those plantings are, how they relate to the plantings that are in the garden, are all things that we're working on and will continue to refine as we move through the land use process and then ultimately get closer to starting construction on the project. But this gives you some sense. I mean, we're really hoping, and this is a view, if you were in the garden, looking toward the backside of the building, which is the north facade, and how we hope to be able to relate our backyard garden space to the community garden, and we look forward to having opportunities to discuss how that works with directly with the gardens. And now we'll move on to the fourth site, which is 1761 Park Avenue. So this is the northeast corner of 122nd Street and Park Avenue. It's a site that fronts onto the Metro North Viaduct. You can go to the next slide. And this is, again, one of the two sites in this cluster that's currently occupied by Community Garden. And on this view, you see outlined in red the current extent of the Community Garden footprint. The portion in green, which is on 122nd Street, is the portion that will remain, and the portion that extends out to Park Avenue that's currently shown here shaded in brown is the portion that is the development site. And this building is the largest of the four in the cluster. It will have 52 apartments, and this one will have ground floor and second floor community facility space. And for those who've been around and involved in the neighborhood for a while, this will be one of the first projects that will be built under the new East Harlem zoning. So Park Avenue was rezoned as part of the coming out of the East Harlem neighborhood planning process, and the rezoning that was finalized a couple of years ago, which mandated things like the ground floor and second floor community facility space to activate the spaces. And also to elevate apartments up above the level of the viaduct. And so the design of the project accomplishes that. So again, 52 apartments, a mix of studio, 1 bedroom and 2 bedrooms, the community facility space on the lower 2 floors. The entrance to the residential will be on 122nd Street in the space that's just on the right side of your screen there. And this building will also feature a landscape rooftop terrace and a common laundry room that will be on the floor where the rooftop terrace is as well. Next slide. And this is the view looking actually sort of from the viaduct to the east, northeast, to see kind of the full extent of the building. The entrance that you see facing onto Park Avenue is an entrance to the community facility space. There is the potential for a second entrance to that space off of 122nd Street. And then at the very kind of eastern end of the site is where the entrance to the residential would be located. And this, the design for this building has evolved quite a bit from the version that we showed you. The massing is largely the same, but we have revisited the materials, the color. It was initially shown in kind of much grayer tones. We really wanted to warm up the look of it and also really think about the brick. The other thing that we wanted to mention is when we had first come to the committee last year to present the plans, we spoke a little bit about our plans to incorporate public artwork into the project, and that is still very much something that we intend to do. We aren't showing it here because it's a process that we're kind of still going through in terms of determining the locations for the public artwork and the exact medium in which the artwork might be created. But we are thinking that one location for that is if you're looking at this Park Avenue building, the wide sort of section of brick that fronts onto Park Avenue and is very visible from anywhere to the west and from the viaduct is one place where we're thinking of doing a large scale mural on the building. But we have not kind of decided what that's going to look like yet. And it's something that we want to develop a process to work with the community to determine what's the best way to go about that, who the artist or artists should be, and what it might look like. So right now we're not showing anything there, but it's definitely kind of a big canvas that we're thinking about for doing something very large scale and visible. And I think that's it on design, and I will turn it back over to Jonathan for a few more notes about the project, and then we're happy to take your questions and comments.
Great, thank you very much, Chris. And yeah, I think I just wanted to also reiterate what we mentioned in the previous presentations, our commitment to community outreach and engagement with East Harlem in general. And I think to that point, we are going to be participating in the Housing Ambassador Program, and we're going to follow Community Board 11's Affordable Housing Community Preference Outreach Guidelines. And that's something that we'll continue to develop directly with the Community Board, through meetings like this and the ULURP process itself. So we're excited to further nail down this aspect as we get closer to the ULURP process. And then we also wanted just to reiterate, for all homeless set-aside apartments, the referrals will be coming through HPD, and we'll be participating in that program. And the last item I also wanted to mention was our commitment to MWB build up and hiring locally. Ascendant and MDG have track records of exceeding requirements for MWB involvement and Section 3 involvement on other affordable housing projects. We're going to take that experience and continue to follow that program and our commitment to exceeding in these standards with the Las Raices project as well. And that sums up our presentation. So thank you guys very much. We appreciate being able to continue to share the progress our project is taking, and continuing to have opportunities to work with the community board and the public on delivering the best outcomes for the residents of East Harlem. So thank you guys.
Thank you all for the presentation. It was very, very informative. I am not going to reread the rules, but I will again say, please keep your question as succinct as possible, or your comments. I will call on our committee members first, and then I will go on to our attendees. We have 3 committee members with their hand raised. I saw Jessica Elliott first, Stephen, and then Morris, just to give you a heads up on the rotation.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you to all of you for the update on this presentation. I'm the chair of the Parks Committee, so it would be remiss of me not to touch on the impacts to the community gardens. I understand this is temporarily allocated land for their use, which is being developed, and that all makes perfect sense. One of the things we talked about at the last meeting was trying to understand the impact of the building on the sun that the garden gets. I noticed you had a rendering from the garden looking at the building. Was that modeled with any specific daytime? It looks like the sun angle may not be accurate. I was wondering if you did any sun path diagrams to understand that impact.
I'll take that question. No, the rendering was not done with a specific sun angle assumed. It was really just to show relationship of the garden to the rear yard, the fencing, and potential planting. The impact, if any, of the building in terms of shadows is what's currently being studied as part of the EIS process. I think that will be kind of determined and disclosed as part of that process, and HPD may be able to speak to that more than I can, but.
Right, just to add on to what Chris stated, the scoping meeting was held on the 31st of March, and the comment period, ended this Monday. So many of those questions will be responded to in writing through the EIS process, and that will be addressed as well.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jessica. Stephen,
Yeah, thank you to Ascendant for the presentation. It was very helpful, much appreciated. Just two brief questions. One, as this is a pre-ULURP, do you anticipate any significant or minor changes for that fact when it does get certified?
I'm sorry. Good evening, Stephen. I'm sorry, I didn't hear. Do we anticipate any changes to what?
Changes to the plan as presented to us, being that it's in the pre-certification stage.
Well, I'll let the development team respond to some of the design updates that were provided. If there are any requests or questions or comments where changes can be accommodated, they will be incorporated.
Yeah, I mean, I think in terms of the overall size of the buildings, apartment mix, the general designs of the buildings, those are pretty much set at this point. So I don't anticipate there being anything significant between now and certification that would change, the unit mix or how the buildings look. I mean, I think, as I noted, we're continuing to refine the plans, and I think that will be an ongoing process. So there may be minor changes to, as we kind of work through selecting specific building materials, as we kind of, work through some of the details around some of the site issues. But generally, this is the set of plans and elevations that we would imagine we'd be presenting to the community board starting next month post certification.
Follow-up question. One of our long-term goals as a board and in a committee with collaboration with our other committees such as economic development is to find innovative and interesting ways to engage the community in local hiring, minority-owned business, participation. I see that you're working with the MWBE programs. Have you spoken to the Economic Development Committee in terms of local hiring and small business participation?
We have not yet presented to that committee, but we would certainly be happy to do so.
That all, Stephen? I'm assuming so. Jessica Morris, and then Ivy.
Thanks, Elsie. I think I have 3.5 questions. They're real questions this time. One is straightforward. Maybe I'll just go through them all. Is there an affordability breakdown per site? We have it in the presentation. It's all lumped together across the cluster. It would be nice to see the term sheets for each individual site if that's available, and I'm sure that it can be. second question is, who sets the rent and leasing terms for the community facility space? Is that now Ascendant and MDG as the owners, or does the city have some say in those kind of terms? What I'm getting at is generally they're accommodating and affordable terms of lease for the types of tenants that would support good activity in the community is a question. And then the sort of third and a half question is about how your buildings relate to the street. It sort of breaks my heart when the good guys become the bad guys and start gobbling up all of our community gardens to make really needed affordable housing. And so, you know, understanding the necessity of, you know, a necessary evil, right? In some sense, and good buildings and good term sheets, half of the units afforded to very low, extremely low, and permanently homeless people. I guess my question is, there is no rule that says there needs to be some, you know, accommodation for, you know, the sweat equity that is being lost in the garden space. I don't see any street trees here, and I wonder, you know, this we recognize through COVID, and especially at the 338 East 117th Street, I think that's a dead end street, and that's a street that is not used for getting places. It's a street that's used for parking, and it's a cobblestone street. And is there, you know, is there a responsibility for owners now to consider their street space in a way that can support community activity beyond its four walls? So I think, you know, of course, with everything there are dollars attached, but with a sort of a city responsibility in this disposition, can there be some sort of arrangement or point or agreement or responsibility to, you know, support public open space for what's being lost? You know, there's a street design manual, and I would encourage, you know, going beyond the property line to sort of suggest what may be possible, not only on this site. And I guess my design comment is the depth of the infrastructure, the raised track means that you have to get really, really far away. It's almost impossible to see the sort of floor 3, 4, 5, and 6, where there would be a kind of a slice of mural. You can't see it from across Park Avenue. You can't see it from Madison. You know, where can you see it from? So I'm wondering if, you know, if that Park Avenue facade is the right facade to express the sort of the artistic, you know, community face on. But that's, you know, for consideration. I think, you know, really having a real good look on what your bandwidth would be if you invest there, and where your sort of viewing distance would need to be, where you may be able to see from a further vantage on other facades is perhaps worth considering. Any responses or comments? There were 3 questions in there, Elsie.
And I tried to take notes. I will try to get to all of them. Okay, so breakdown of affordability by site. We don't have that in the presentation, but that is certainly something that we can provide. Definitely by the time we come back, and I will we'll work on it before we get into ULURP. Who sets the rent and the lease terms for the community facility space? That is set by the developer owner of the property. So it would be, you know, something that Ascendant and MDG would work through. I mean, obviously our commitment as a team and Ascendant's commitment as a neighborhood-based organization is, you know, really to find the best user or users for those spaces and to make those spaces as affordable as we can. Obviously, in mixed use affordable housing buildings, there is always a tension between keeping rents low for the residents of the building and what the rents can be for any commercial or community facility space. But obviously, we want this to be a project that works both for the residents, but also for the broader community and for whatever organization or organizations take space in the ground floor and second floor at this space, and then the smaller space over on 102nd Street. So, that's definitely something that we're thinking about, and we're certainly, we're several years out from when the space will be available. So it's a little bit difficult to say at the moment who might occupy those spaces, but we welcome all suggestions. If there are organizations that you know of that are in the community that are looking for space, we certainly welcome that, and we're happy to have conversations with any of them to think through how the space could work for them and for their needs. In terms of street trees, right now that's just, we haven't gotten to the point of doing our builder's pavement plans. Obviously, all of the sites will comply with DOT guidelines and parks guidelines about street trees and their locations. We want to have the sites be as green as possible and to make the streets as pleasant as possible. So they're not shown in the renderings right now because we don't know exactly where the street tree pits will be, but there certainly will be street trees, I believe, on all of the sites where they're, where we can do them, where there's not obstructions or underground utilities that might prevent them. So absolutely, we're committed to that. I mean, it's a requirement. As developers, we would, be compelled to do it anyway, but as good neighbors and citizens, we would want to do it as well. And I'll also note that the landscape architect that we have on this project, Terrain, is actually working with Ascendant on a portfolio-wide analysis and kind of recommendations for things that we can do across all of our buildings all over the neighborhood in terms of upgrading and improving street tree pits that we have at all of our buildings, adding tree guards where we don't have them, making sure that we have healthy street trees, other plantings, expanding them, to the extent that we can do rainwater retention, if that's, obviously, rain and flooding is a huge issue throughout the neighborhood. So those are all things that we're thinking about across all of our existing buildings and all of our pipeline sites. So we'll definitely be thinking about that with them. We haven't gotten to that stage yet, but it's definitely on our radar screen. And I appreciate the feedback about the visibility or invisibility or a potential obstruction of something on Park Avenue. So we're still thinking about it. There is a wall that you may have seen, the alternate view of this site. Jonathan, if you can go back to the slide that shows the entrance side, the 122nd Street side. There is a wall here that in our previous presentation, we had shown the possibility of some type of public artwork or green wall at that location, and that's something that we're also still considering. So we're definitely, we haven't made any final decisions on that, which is why we chose to not show anything at the moment, because we want this kind of feedback about what makes the most sense. I hope I got all 3.5 of them.
You did. That was great. Great teamwork, guys. I really appreciate it. Ivy, you're next.
Yeah, hi. Thanks for the presentation. And I think, Beyond, I really admire the work you guys do and all of the building that's happening to get more affordable housing in this neighborhood. Having said that, I don't want to mince my words here. I see these renderings, and as a designer and architect myself, and someone who studied design for a long time, as architects have to do, I find this design very uninspired. And the boxy massing is almost identical to other similar projects that are going up in the neighborhood. The colors of this beige and the darker beige brick color, and the stripiness and these kinds of rectangular blocks assembled together. I feel like all of the buildings that are being built that are these HPD projects, unfortunately, are creating this new sameness which to me is very uninspired. Does anyone look at this rendering and say that's a beautiful building? And I think this is really important. I think we have this opportunity in this neighborhood to allow creatives or people from the neighborhood to collaborate and have creative input. And this is what we come up with, these rectangular blocks that really look like exactly what has already been done on 111th and Park at the project that I always forget its name, that's going up right now with, a blank facade facing the train track. And I just want to understand why we are defaulting to these really uninspired designs. Can we get, university students from City College or Columbia or Parsons? Literally, there's many architecture students in the city that could contribute to like a design competition, or designating a 20-foot by 20-foot elevation for community art does not a building make. I'm sorry, that's cool, great, we'll have a cute little mural, but what about this whole I just see these renderings and I think it's a totally missed opportunity, and it's really disappointing to me, because I think that there's money being spent here and we should all be really excited about that, and we should be thrilled, like I said, about all the good work HPD is doing. But why in God's name can we not hire some more inspired architects to make these designs? It's that's how I feel. Okay, I want to respond to what Marina's saying. I take that to heart. Yes. Are we always going to say, yes, creative?
Sorry, I know you want to respond to what Marina says, but not everybody can see that comment. And also,
okay, I'll read what she said.
She said, Marina, so I just don't want to. I will allow her to speak, and then
sure.
you can do that at that point. I just didn't want to confuse people who are probably on the phone or don't know exactly what's happening. And Marina, if you could just raise your hand if you have a comment to make, because as stated previously, the chat should only be used for technical difficulties and not for comments or questions.
So there is no world in which we should choose expensive over affordable housing. I am not saying that we should have fancy buildings and not have affordable housing. That is absolutely the opposite of what I'm saying. I am saying we should celebrate that we're getting affordable housing. We should hire some better designers to make it more beautiful. And it shouldn't be value engineered to look like literally everything else and every other building block or like a stack of Legos in the neighborhood. It should be more beautiful. That's what I think.
Thank you, Ivy. We have more attendees. Is that all the committee members, Angel? I'm sorry. Just want to make sure I'm seeing it right.
Yes, that's all committee members.
Okay, so I will now take Tamika Mapp, then Marie and Marina.
Thank you, Chair. My question is for the outreach. Everybody said they're going to try to do outreach in our communities to make sure our communities get into these affordable housing spaces. How can we ensure that our members who are homeless, that's currently on a waiting list, getting in these apartments? Because we only got a handful of apartments and it says New York, but it doesn't specify East Harlem residents. I believe that anything that's built on East Harlem's land, East Harlem residents should get 100%, and every effort that you can to make sure every person that want these housings that live in East Harlem should be thought of and should have a way of contacting them, because not everybody goes through the community board. So can you tell me a little bit more of what consider the outreach that you're going to do to make sure that East Harlem residents, one, knows about the program, and two, have a better chance of actually getting into these apartments?
So thank you for your questions, Tanika. I will take the first part of that, and the development team, if they have anything to add, feel free. You know, the 50% community board requirement is still in place as it stands today. And, since Housing Connect was implemented, that computerized version has guaranteed that 50% compliance is taking place. So in addition to that, the fact that the development team has offered upfront to serve as ambassadors and work with confirming that residents in the area are able to apply, know how to apply to Housing Connect, which there's a new 2.0 version, which has a lot of features that are much easier to navigate than in the past. It's really great that they're being proactive. That Housing Ambassador program means that people are in the community actively engaged in working to get people registered for the Housing Connect program.
Yeah, and I'll pick up on that. This is Chris again from Ascendant. Yeah, I mean, obviously it is absolutely our intention to do everything that we can to get the word out about the apartments and to make sure that, within HPD's requirements, that we do everything we can and go above and beyond just, what HPD requires, but to really do the most broad public outreach that we possibly can. So we welcome any suggestions that you have about ways that we can do that. Whether it's signage on the site so that people who see something happening know what the process is and who to contact and how to contact and get involved. When we were doing briefings last year for elected officials on this project, the Manhattan Borough President Gail Brewer made a great suggestion and offer that they have mailing lists that they use to get information out to residents of different parts of the borough, and that we could work through them to do mass mailings so that information could be sent out to everybody in the community so that they would know about it. So we're really open to any creative ideas for making sure that the largest number of people know about it and have the opportunity to apply. So we welcome any other suggestions that you have.
Thank you.
For our chair momentarily. So our next question is from Marie, followed by Marina.
Thanks, Steve. I had a question about accessibility for people with disabilities. Can you talk about how that, just clarify how the units are being calculated across the scattered site, and also about the buildings where there's no elevator and mechanicals in the ground floor? Does that mean that then there's no accessible units in those buildings? And if you are calculating across the scattered sites, does that mean that some of the larger buildings will have more fully accessible units, or are you doing something to provide a little bit more accessibility than is required? Because that's also not only affordable, but affordable and accessible to people with disabilities is really important for the community. Thank you.
Thanks, Marie. Great question. So the two largest buildings in the cluster have elevators. So the Park Avenue building that you see on the screen, and then the building on East 118th Street. So all of the apartments in those buildings would be accessible with elevator service. The two smallest of the infill sites are walk-up buildings. So that those are two 5-story buildings. The building on East 117th Street has one ground floor apartment that faces into the rear yard, and then mechanical space at the front, which is the blank wall that you saw. And the building on East 102nd Street has its entire ground floor is the small community facility space. So there is no apartment on the ground floor of that building. And I'm sorry, we don't have the architect here this evening, but we can definitely get back with a more detailed answer about all of the requirements and how we're meeting them on the site.
That would be great. And also for the fully accessible units, like where I know it's a small number, but the distribution of what type of units for the fully accessible units would be great.
Yep. we can work on that.
Thank you.
Good question, Marie. Moving on, Marina.
Yes, thank you. So this is not really a question. I just wanted to repeat what my comment was. I apologize for putting it in the chat. I was just trying to be on my best behavior this month. But I wrote, I hear you, Ivy, but quote, creative housing is expensive in this capitalist economy. So I'll take 100% affordable any day. And I say that because I had the opportunity to be given an apartment in one of those new ugly buildings that I had to fight for to get in. But I'm like thrilled to see my neighbors are like people from the neighborhood, people who look like us. And we have a really clean, brand new building that is affordable for the rates that people, have. And I'm really grateful for that. So I understand, we have buildings like the Smile building on 126th Street is so cool and, whatever. And that's great, but they can afford to build something like that because the rents there are outrageous. So it's not a back and forth, Ivy. I really don't want to do that. But, I got to say that I'm grateful also because my building, Lexington Gardens, also helped to displace a really ugly mural that was there on Lexington and 108th. But I will say that murals are an East Harlem tradition and an easy way to beautify these buildings. And I would encourage the developers to use those blank spaces to bring in local artists and create art that reflects the history of this neighborhood. And that's our tradition. Our East Harlem buildings have served as canvases for many generations. So it's not a question, it's not a back and forth. But, given how real estate works in this, economy, that's the reality. And unfortunately, what we can work with.
If I could just respond collectively to the comments, and also not to jump into a back and forth about it. I appreciate the feedback. Design is very important to us at Ascendant. The building that you see as my backdrop is actually one of our rehab buildings on East 116th Street. We just completed rehab on it about a year and a half ago. And we have now rehabbed 21 of our 28 buildings in the last couple of years since I became executive director. And it has been very important to me and to our entire organization that we prioritize good design, both inside and outside of our buildings. We're lucky enough to have been selected by Enterprise Community Partners to host a Rose Architectural Fellow who is working with us. Unfortunately, they're on a Rose Fellows retreat this week, so they couldn't be with us this evening. But that architect is with us during all of our design discussions and works with all of our outside architects for all of our new projects. I appreciate the feedback. As I said, we're continuing to work on refinements to the designs. We felt that a brick facade on this building and certainly on the smaller buildings was in keeping with the context of the neighborhood. Whether it's the color of the brick that's concerned. I mean, we haven't selected final colors for the brick. There are other materials for facades, some of which, might be less expensive, some of which might be a little bit more expensive. We're certainly happy to explore those. Part of the issue with this site is it's very narrow, and to accommodate all of the programmatic requirements, to maximize the apartment layouts, and to, kind of push the bulk as far as possible toward Park Avenue and away from the site of the Jackie Robinson Garden. This is what we felt was the best massing. We believe that the fact that it's broken down and that it has a series of steps and setbacks is, a way to help to activate the facade. But I hear the feedback, and this is still an ongoing process. Obviously, the building is not anywhere near built yet, so you know, we are going to continue to work on it. And, you know, we want to be proud of this project when it's done, and we want the community to be proud of it. You know, we don't ever want to be example A of a project that the community board points to and says, we don't want any more of that. So, you know, we hear your feedback, and we are going to keep working on it until we hopefully make as many people possible with it as we can.
Thank you, Chris. I just want to close and say that, you know, I do want to note that market rate buildings are just as ugly. We see a lot of these, you know, designs on 86th Street, and I don't want to come across as saying that I defend George James. During the rezoning, you said, oh, 3rd Avenue should look like, you know, should match 86th Street and all that. That's not where I'm going with this, but I want to say affordable housing is needed and appreciated. And that's all. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you. No problem.
If I can respond.
So I just actually want, we have a limited amount of time for the remainder of the questions. I will allow you to speak after Felipe asks his question, and then we can wrap this up. Felipe?
Hi, good evening. My name is Felipe Cortez, Deputy Director of the Manhattan Planning Team at HPD. I just want to make a clarification about the homeless set aside and who might be able to fulfill those units. The individual or families that are going to use these units basically are DHS referrals. They are not people that HPD or the team will select through the lottery. And that's the main clarification that I wanted to make, that are DHS referrals.
Thank you for that. Sorry, I'm on Angel C. Sometimes my participants doesn't work well.
Would I be able to comment on the design comments?
Yes, very quickly, and then, okay, I say Ivy, that's a new hand. All right, and then Ivy will go right up.
Okay, so both Ivy and Marina both have great points. I will say that we often get criticized as an agency, or, you know, as we're development partners with the developers who present projects before you, we get criticized in many contexts if the buildings are not in context with the surrounding buildings.
Mm-hmm.
On the other hand, you know, I don't know how, you know, in the future, there can be some consideration for designs that are very different. I think I may have more of an open mind than some people in terms of different buildings. I think I'm the only one in the United States who likes that blue building in the Lower East Side. Everyone hates it except for me. So there's something to be said about buildings that really look different, or that are really creative. And it's just a really hard balance, as Marina mentioned, about cost factors as well. And as Chris mentioned, these sites are really small. So in these cases, it's very difficult to even design buildings to fit within these small and hard to develop spaces. But I appreciate in both comments.
Thank you. Ivy?
Yeah, I wanted to respond quickly. You know, I really feel passionately that it shouldn't be a trade-off between cost and innovation and, you know, carefully, thoughtfully designed buildings. And Marina, that's a point that goes directly to what you said. I understand fully that there is nothing more important than getting affordable housing in our neighborhood for the lowest income brackets. That goes without being said. I feel that it is morally wrong to say we're going to house people, but they're going to get somewhat less or inferior in any regard housing just so that we can get it built. Okay, so that's just one thing. The second thing is, yeah, I think that there are a lot of comments even in the text about, even in the chat, which I shouldn't reference, but there are many ways that there are a few design professionals on this committee, and we're all aware that there are a lot of ways to get things to look little less of the same as anything else. And I would really just challenge HPD and Ascendant to really have more critical review processes for design and aesthetics in their design processes, because I think this really matters. And of course, murals and the tradition of murals, as an East Harlem resident, I'm fully aware that that's significant, but I also don't think we can use that as a crutch or at any point say that, Marina, please, I don't want to argue with you. I also, you know, I'm personally a little bit offended that you would imply that I don't know about real estate costs and how much it costs to build things. As a professional architect, I'm very well aware of how much it costs to build things in New York City and what the real estate markets demand. So I just, you know, my interests are for the best interests of the community, of which I am a part and have been for a decade. And I've grown up in New York City myself. So just because, you know, my name might be different or I look a little different, you know, I'm right here with you. And I think we need to be critical of design and what we're building and what we're spending money on. And we don't want to create a new sameness that perpetuates the same kinds of like stereotypes that we have struggled with a lot of the NYCHA projects and the poor maintenance problems and the sort of derelict sort of streetscapes and issues, sanitation issues that we have grappled with as a fallout from all that sameness. So I think we just have to be conscious of it.
Thank you, Ivy. With that, I'm going to close out the comments and the questions for this part of the conversation, and we're going to be moving on into old business. I want to thank all of the presenters of tonight's presentations. We will be following up on a few items that were requested, and especially for us, we will be putting together some questions for the first presenter in terms of having that prepared for them before the May 12th meeting, and any additional information that was requested or was promised by HPD or Ascendant, we will make sure that we follow up with that in the email so we can get that to the committee as soon as possible. With that being said, I will ask if there's any old business from our committee members. You're welcome. Take care also. Okay, none.
Sorry, I can't. My hand is raised, but it's not raised. Verbally raising my hand. Sorry, Elsie.
Yes.
We had a couple of points of follow-up in our minutes last month, questions that were raised, and some communications from L&M that we're going to follow that week. Did those happen? Was there a response? Did we make progress or get response? Or was on the sewer closure, the road closure along Park Avenue?
Yes.
I can speak to that. We did get some responses, and I will circulate that to the committee via email. I don't have it at hand.
Thank you, Angel. That's all, Elsie. Thank you.
No problem. All right, see, no more old business. Any new business? Committee members? Okay, I would just also like to bring up the fact that I do want to have a conversation around minute taking. So if we can just engage in that for a quick second. Jessica Elliott has been providing us with minutes for the last few meetings and for this meeting. And so I just wanted to kind of throw out there that maybe we can do kind of a rotation if people are open to that or have any ideas. If you are unable to kind of maneuver, I know that not everybody is on a computer or maybe through a phone. So if you have any objections to being able to take minutes, you know, that's fine. But just think it should be equitable and fair. Andrew, I see your hand up.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that I cannot take minutes next week, but for the June meeting, sorry, next month, but for the June meeting, I could.
Well, guess what you just got?
Oh, crap. What did I do?
And so I'm looking for a taker for me. I'm guessing this is where we're at this point.
Elsie, I'll just for the record, I think I did last month, but I'm happy to do May. Yeah, I think rotating is a fantastic idea. And I love that kind of share the burden, share the love responsibility. So I'm happy to do May. We've got some June and others on the horizon.
Do we have like if we could just hear all the dates of all the meetings for the whole year, that would be helpful to figure out.
Sure. So what I'll do is I'll put it together. I think it's for now it's just May 12th, which is the next meeting. And then in June, I don't have the date for that one. I'm not sure, but hoping we don't have to meet in July, but we may because of some of the upcoming ULURP and so we may have to meet in July. So that would be an additional meeting. But I don't know, Angel, do you have the dates for those?
The July is not decided yet. The June, I'm like,
June 9th.
The 9th, thank you for the save. I was not finding it on my screen.
Sorry, Elsie, this is Jessica Morska. I'm happy to also step back from doing minutes next month if somebody else wants to do them as well. I'm a chronic volunteer, so I'm here if you need me, but you know, I don't have to be here if you don't need me.
I can do
May. All right. I
doesn't mind not doing May.
All right, Andrew. Is that an old hand? Sorry.
Yeah, no, I was a new hand. I just wanted to know if Angel or someone could go and pass around, or maybe Stephen could, minutes that have been really helpful in the past, because it seems like whenever I see notes from any meeting here, like on the board generally, or any board throughout the city, like it just varies. Like some is 5 sentences, some is a thesis. So maybe like do's and like a good example and a bad example.
Sure.
That's great.
Yeah, I'm happy to do that.
There's a sweet spot between being a stenographer and being vague that you got to find. It happens with experience, but I'm sure Angel has a nice write-up.
Marissa Mack has some pretty incredible minute-taking skills, I've noticed, from EcoDev. They're good minutes to read.
Great. Angel will pass that around and make sure we get that. And for now, we have Ivy in May 12th, Andrew June 9th, and to be determined a July meeting, but I think we are going to have one. Any additional new business to bring before the board? Andrew, is your hand up again? No?
Nah, my bad.
No, okay. Elliot, yes. That's a new hand, correct?
Hey, Elsie, thank you so much. I just wanted to, I sent an email to you and Angel about the connection with the NYCHA resiliency planning team. So if we could touch on that maybe next month, or follow up on that to make sure that, I think that was a big conversation when we heard the zoning text amendment for coastal flood resiliency. So it would be good to hear what they're doing. Thanks.
Thank you. Andrew, you got that for next month?
Sure.
Great. And Chris, right?
She's not on the committee. Chris,
I'm not on
what are
the
you doing?
committee, but I just wanted to, sorry, I didn't want to keep you all too late. I just wanted to mention, I put it in the chat, but we, first of all, thank you for the feedback, and we do want to continue to work with you on the Las Raíces project. But we also today launched the new Landmark East Harlem website, which is a vast improvement over the old one. So I put it into the chat. It's landmarkeastharlem, all one word, .org. So please check it out and you know, spread the word. We're really excited about it, and we look forward to your feedback and to continuing to build it out in the future, and coming back to the committee actually with updates on what we've been working on. So that's with my Landmark East Harlem hat on. So
Gotcha. Sneaking in to our business meeting, but okay. So our next item is our last item, should I say, is our roll call item. It's brand new to us. We're ending with a roll call as well. So Angel.
Okay. Jessica Elliott.
Present, and I forgot to do this at my meeting, so sorry.
Okay, we're testing it out this month. Working out the kinks. Elsie,
Present.
Ivy,
Present.
Francis,
Present.
Jessica Morris. Where'd she go?
I'm still here, yep.
Okay. Andrew,
Yep, present.
thank you. Stephen, Stephen. Oh, I can't hear you, buddy, but I see you. I see you mouthing present. Okay, thank you. And Candy.
Yeah.
Thank you, Candy. Okay, we had quorum at the end. That's it.
Check us out. So if there are no further objections, we will adjourn the meeting.
9:10.
No objections to that, right? Okay, guys.
Wait, so with this new script, are we also keeping time? Because the points efficiency, right? This is good, 9:10.
Yeah, 9:10.
Yeah, well done, Elsie.
Thank you all. And I wish you a good night and I will see you soon.
Just for the record, George James was very late. So I'm gonna put it in the minutes.
I noticed that. It does not go unnoticed.
Good night, guys.
Good night.
Night, everyone.
Good night.
Elsie, I have a question.